I'm Michelle Ireland from Sneaky Bunny Sewing. Today we're in my sewing room and we're going to talk about fitting pants. Recently I got into making pants, and this is my first pair of pants that I ever made. I used McCall 7937, the pants pattern from that pattern, and I made a wearable muslin out of fabric that I got at the bargain area in my local fabric land. But I made it quite a while back, and now it's pretty loose fitting because I lost 25 pounds. So I've been finding a lot of my clothes are really fitting kind of baggy and loose. And I've been finding very creative solutions to just make what I have work for me and fit. You know, cinching the waist with a belt or adding waist ties at the waist seams. But this pair of pants I put on this morning and I tried to wear it thinking, well, it's fine if it's a little loose. But they drive me crazy because they ride down. Like, this is where they want to sit. They are sitting really low on my hips. See, up here is my natural waist, and that's where they're supposed to sit. And instead, they're almost falling off. They're down like this far, and also the crotch is baggy and loose. So, I've never taken in a pair of pants. So I thought that I put on my thinking cap and thought, well, I can probably use the same process that I used when I was making my wearable muslin to make them fit again, to alter them and take them in. So this is kind of what I'm going to do. I'm going to put them on inside out, and I'm going to use safety pins, pin up the sides until I get everything fitting quite well. So it's going to be, I'm going to take them in just at the sides and taper down into that seam until I get a nice fit again. Which means I'll have to do some seam ripping, take out the zipper, reinstall that, and seam rip along here, take in my facing. I have an inner facing, so I'll have to take that in. But yeah, I don't know. I just thought I'm going to give it a whirl, and I'll take you along for the process. Enjoy! So I'm back. So I put the pants on inside out, and I'm standing further back so you can see more of the pants. And it actually didn't take that many safety pins to get this fitting nicely, to get it to sit up here. I might taper it. Depends. I'll play around with where I want the taper to kind of end, because like I might want it to stay loose further down the leg is what I'm thinking, but then just have it more fitted, around the butt and the legs up here, definitely here to keep it, sitting where it needs to sit. But yeah, and I was looking at it, and I don't think I'm going to spend a lot of time with my seam ripper either, because I think what I can do, see, this is my facing right here. I'll come a little closer. Here's my facing. You can see it looks a little ridiculous inside out. There's my zipper. So what I do is it's tacked. The facing is tacked to my side. So I just seam rip that open, and then this will all, and it's seam ripped to the darts, and all the sides will be all around. Kind of keep that in place to keep it from flipping up when I wear it. So I undo all that, and then I measure, take my measuring tape. So we know from looking at this that we have to come in about a half inch up here. So that would be on this side, a half inch on that seam. So you have to take that into account, right? Whatever you take from the front, you take the equal amount from the back, right? So we do that, and same thing, we'll draw a line. So we'll measure down here, we'll measure this one. We know that about this part of my hip right here, it's going to be a little bit more than half an inch. Yeah, it's going to be about No, it's about 1/2 inch again, right? So we're going to go 1/2 inch all down here. We'll measure very carefully. Decide where we want this taper to start, right? That's where we basically sew into the existing seam as if, you know, this is the new size, right? Sew into the existing seam, then we would snip all along here and just make a new seam allowance, right? Just measure, make our seam allowance like a 5/8 seam allowance. Insert our edges and then finish it like I have finished here. So you can see how it's finished. Just serging along these side seams, you know, serging along here, along my face. Yeah. So yeah, if for anyone who is nervous about making pants, I highly recommend, you know, a pattern like the Call 7937, or there's a free pattern which I found online. I will put that one in the description, the video description below, and it would work also. And all you want to look for if you're getting into making pants is I would skip the pockets if I were you, and just look for a simple pant front, pant back, some kind of facing and a side zipper, and like little darts. And yeah, and then it makes, you know, pants, and then you just pick something stretchy. That's what I would do. Go find something cheap that you know aren't too precious about, so that if you mess it up, you haven't spent a lot of money. And then you just make yourself a wearable muslin and see how it goes. Yeah, and I purposely went with a stretchy fabric when I made mine, because I tend to gravitate more towards leggings and tighter fitting, sort of fitted pants, because I like blouses and things like that over top. So yeah, that's I'm gonna go get this marked up, and I will show you the next step where I have measured everything, drawn my lines, and then I'll show you kind of what I do to make these pants fit again. So here's my pair of pants, and I'm just figuring out how to take these in and get it symmetrical on both sides. So what I've done, this is the side with the zipper, and the zipper is installed. So up here is the facing, and then the zipper goes all the way down to about here. So what I was thinking is I'm going to go, and so this is the new cutting line that I marked with chalk, and this would be the new sewing line. So I would start about here where the zipper ends and sew down this new seam line until I meet down here, and I would just taper into that original seam line and end there, right? And install my zipper. Well, I would cut this off first. I would start up here, cut off to create the new seam allowance, and then zigzag those edges, right? And then I have this piece that I can use on the other side to know how much to cut off and be able to mark up where my new seam allowance is. That would be the edge, but mark in from there, that would be my new seam, so then I can mark it with chalk and then sew down the other side. It should be exactly symmetrical with the least amount of work and figuring. So that's the plan, and yeah, that's what I'm going to try. Cutting down there, I do have the pins there. Just kind of fold it so that it happens evenly on both sides. And then what I did when I did this is I left this existing seam that was there. So I do have a little bit that I have to go in and seam rip just for a short spell, all the way down to there until it tapers into the original seam line. The way to get it symmetrical is to just use this to measure on the other side and then cut your pants down. So I'll carefully pin it and cut the same off there, and then measure my seam allowance and then sew. So here I've just kind of pinned this little piece. This extended past, so I've gone with this seam line instead of this seam line. I think, I don't know, somehow it ended up bigger. So it's better to err on the side of too big, because you could always take it in more, than too small, right? So here we go. We just kind of cut whatever we cut off the other side, off this side. And you just kind of flatten it out, nice and flat. So we're doing the same to the front and the back. Now, if you have asymmetry, an asymmetrical body, you would do each side separately, but my body is pretty symmetrical. So I'm just going to do the exact same thing to this side that I did to the other side. And then I will measure in from the edge my new seam allowance, and then sew that down and do all my finishing steps. Put it back together, install the zip, zigzag my edges, that kind of thing. I'm going to serge these edges. Before I see that it looks a little bit different, my seam allowance here, my serger wasn't working back then, so I just zigzagged using my sewing machine, and that works fine too. So you can do either. Yeah, that's all there is to it. So what had happened when I went to make my adjustments is along this spacing here, you can see that I have a row of understitching, and I had to seam rip that in order to get it all flattened out so I could adjust the pants and take them in. So I'll just go in, and you can see my stitching all loose on this side. All loose right there. So I'm just going to go in and tidy up that understitching and get it all proper again. And then, yeah, install my zipper. I will show you how to do that. I have all my seam allowances serged, and I have slid over. I'm at my sewing station. I'll show you how to install that zipper. So what we have is one of these zippers. This is just a normal zipper. This is not an invisible zipper. This is just a basic zipper. I wouldn't do invisible zip on this. Like, this is a light stretch, so you might be able to get away with it. But in the past, I have really struggled with invisible zips on anything that's quite heavy. So I just did a regular zipper. So what I'm going to do now, install this zip. It's a little bit of a different process. What you want to do is go to your machine, increase your stitch length to, I don't know, 3.5 is fine. And we're going to stitch down this top line. So that's my seam line. I'm going to stitch all the way down to where the stitching, where I stopped my stitching earlier. But I'm doing just a loose stitch, right? I'm doing a longer stitch length and nice and loose because this is a seam that I'm going to be tearing out after. But I'm going to install the zip sort of behind this seam, centering the zip, and then sew around the zip on the right side, my little top stitching, and then rip my seam over. So that's what we're doing. So I'm going to turn it around and start from the bottom, from the seam where I stopped before. This is just going to hold everything in place while we install the zipper. Little knob at the top. I take our zipper. This is right side to, but remember, we need to start not right at the top of the facing. We have to start at the top of the pants. So we're going to flatten out that seam. So here we go, we have our seam. Yes, we can just give this a quick press with our iron, which is warmed up. Just get things nice and flat. And there, we're going to center our zipper right over that seam. And put it close to the top of the facing, just like so. We're going to be sewing down this way. So we want to face our pins accordingly so that we can pull the pins out easily as we sew. So I don't know to do this on camera, but here we go. There's one. Pull it quite taut. Line up our seam with our zipper. Just need enough to kind of keep it nice and flat while we sew this. You just kind of baste that seam shut, center your zip over it, and then we'll do like a rectangle of top stitching on the other side. And then we cut open our seam. It's quite satisfying actually when you're all done and you cut open that seam. Definitely my favorite part. Okay, we're zoomed in a little bit this time, so you can see a little better what I'm going to do in this zipper. I'm changing out this foot. That's a normal foot. And we're going to a foot that looks more like this. And you sew on each side of this foot for the different sides of the zipper. Make sure you don't sew your zipper on seam line in your pants. You just want to get this. Now we do the same thing on the other side. We switch over our foot. Now, we're going to turn our pants right side. And make sure we're on the side with the zipper. And start at the top. Be careful when you start because there's that zipper pull there. And this is basically just sewing the pants to the zipper tape and the seam allowance. So you kind of want to feel through the fabric if you can, or take a peek on the underside. I should have marked where the end of my zipper was. Okay, the end of the zipper is right. So what we want to do, put a little pin in so I don't forget. And go all the way down. And when we get to that pin, we're going to make sure we miss the metal ending on that zipper. We do not want to go I'll give it just a couple more stitches so I can make sure I clear that without going off the zipper tape. So you do not want to break your needle on the metal tab at the end of the zipper. Then we pivot. We have left our needle down in the fabric. Pivot it. We'll sew across the zipper tape at the bottom. And then we're going to pivot. I think I'm going to go one more stitch across. There we go. And now we're going to sew up the other side. I'm going to go a little slower as we go past that zipper pull. I do not want to sew over that. Go to the top and fix your stitch. There's our zipper. And then you just kind of remove all those little threads. And now the magic moment, right here. Here's where the magic happens. Yeah, we can remove the rest of that seam up there. Because that actually has to get attached to the zipper tape on the inside. That's our facing. So here, the magic moment. The moment I've been waiting for. A working zipper.